at the front. So those of you who are sitting at the back, kindly move forward. In addition to that, please note that you can find the whole agenda of MedEdAfrica 2026 in our website. So our website is MedEdAfrica.org, all in small letters. Again, that is MedEdAfrica.org. You'll be able to find the whole agenda on that website. Kindly note that this session will be mixed, both French and English, and therefore those of you who require interpretation, you can raise your hand, and again our teams will bring you the devices. Once again, welcome to all of you, and we're going to start our program right away. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to start our afternoon session. But before we begin, didn't we have an incredible morning session today? Can we give a warm hand of applause to all the speakers? And of course, to our wonderful audience who made our gathering very vibrant. Ladies and gentlemen, we now proceed to our afternoon plenary, which promises to be one of the most exciting parts of our day. We're going to have an Oxford-style debate centering on a critical question for our continent: global standards or African solutions. The debate will focus on the future of medical school accreditation in Africa, and I'm pleased to introduce to you the moderator for this important session, Dr. Barnabas Alayande. Just to give you a quick introduction to his very impressive credentials, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Barnabas Toby Alayande is a general surgeon, assistant professor of surgery at the University of Global Health Equity in Rwanda, and chair of the Center for Equity in Global Surgery. He also serves as program director for the MSc in Global Health Delivery, Global Surgery Option, and Secretary General of the Pan-African Surgical Healthcare Forum. He's a Harvard program in global surgery and social change alumnus, Harvard Macy Institute alumnus in medical education, Fogarty Global Health Fellow, and holds additional training in global surgery, business, public health, theology, and executive leadership. His scholarship spans surgical equity, trauma care access, surgical education, ethics, conference equity, improvisation in surgery, and the role of artificial intelligence in surgical care. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to Dr. Barnabas. Wasn't that impressive? Welcome, Dr. Barnabas.
Thank you so much. And hello, everybody. You are welcome. We have a very exciting session ahead, and I'd like you to sit back, relax. Don't sit back too much. You kind of should be at the edge of your seats for this debate. So good afternoon, distinguished colleagues, educators, students, regulators, policymakers, and friends. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to this Oxford-style debate at the MedEdAfrica Conference 2026. I will straight away invite the erudite scholars and thought leaders that will be having this conversation. I'd like to please welcome Prof. Harisu Adamu, the Dean of Universities, Andre Salufu de Zinde. Please, can you put your hands together as we make him welcome? I'd like to also make welcome Professor Adeola Fawotade, Provost of the Benjamin Carson Senior CHMS Babcock University. Can you put your hands together for her? Come on. Yes. Let's make welcome Dr. Faith Nawagi, the Africa Regional Rep in Intel. Dr. Faith, please put your hands together for her. And to square up that team of thought, we will have Professor Francois Colliers, the professor at the University of Cape Town, who is joining us. Please put your hands together. All right. On the other side of the boxing ring, we have Professor Lionel Green Thompson, Dean at the University of Cape Town. Please put your hands together for him. Also, Dr. Fiona Makoni, who's Executive Dean, Faculty at University of Zimbabwe. Please, hands together. She was one of the boxers last year, and she's back again this year. I hope this will be defending champion or something. And then Prof. Andwalem Deneke, professor at the Addis Ababa University, is also coming up. And finally, to square up that team, we've got Professor Alice Karimi Mutungi, who's Dean at Kenya Methodist University. All right. So the question is, our debate motion is, if you could just put that up there, I'm trying to move forward. African medical schools should adopt international accreditation standards, particularly those of the World Federation for Medical Education, as the primary pathway for quality assurance. I'll take it again. African medical schools should adopt international accreditation standards, particularly those of the World Federation for Medical Education, as the primary pathway for quality assurance. The theme we're dealing with today is both timely and important, deeply important, because the heart of this debate is one of the most contested questions we have in African health professions education. Should accreditation in the continent move more deliberately towards global recognized standards, or should Africa build and strengthen accreditation frameworks that are more distinctly rooted in our own context, priorities, health systems, educational realities? So this is not just a technical discussion about accreditation checklists or institution audits or regulatory compliance. We're talking about power, relevance, quality, equity, sovereignty, mobility, accountability, etc. So on one end, there's the Yoruba proverb that says a person who has not visited another person's farm will think that their father's farm is the largest. On the other end, there's the Benin proverb that says a tortoise is friends with the snail, and those with shells, they keep their shells close together, suggesting that either maybe Africa should create and maintain continental standards, or Africa should look beyond international standards. Now, this is an Oxford-style debate. And so the purpose is not simply to defend fixed positions. What we want to do is to test these ideas very rigorously. And we're inviting our speakers to argue from first principles, from evidence, from practical realities, from experience. And we're inviting you to listen, to question assumptions, and remain open to changing your mind. Now, we'll first take an initial vote on this position, right? And then we will hear So two teams will present. After that, two teams will present opposing perspectives on the motion. And each speaker is going to deliver a timed speech. And after that, we're going to have teams rebutting the opposing arguments and defending their position. After that, we'll have a moderated discussion. And so from those that are on the chair and those that are on the floor, you have the opportunity. There are two mics to the side. You can come up, make a 1-minute speech, talk to whichever direction, ask whatever questions that you have. And at the end, there's going to be a closing speech from one of the speakers on both sides. We're going to be really tight with time. And so once you start hearing applause, speakers, that means your time is up. All right. So let's begin with the audience vote. African medical schools should adopt international accreditation standards, particularly those of the World Federation for Medical Education, as the primary pathway for quality assurance. So there you go. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your chance. Let's know exactly what you think or you feel about this. At the end of the brilliant talks that we'll be hearing, we'll go back again to take this vote. And you know, the winning team is not about who has more votes. It's about how much the minds of people in the audience have changed. So we're looking at the change and not necessarily at how high or how low it is. All right, so are you there? Yes. No. Are you there? If you have voted, can I see your hand up? All right, about a third of the crowd. We're going towards half. Okay, I think we're in a good place. Everybody done? Yes. So now we are ready to listen to these deep thoughts. Now I'll invite the first speaker from the proposing team to open the debate. I would encourage us to have headsets too, because we're going to be listening both in French and in English. So, Professor, we're going to make welcome Professor Adeola Fowotade to start this conversation. Provost Benjamin Carson, Senior, CMHS, Babcock University.
The chair, my fellow debaters, our distinguished audience, good afternoon, everybody. We refuse to be intimidated, even though we have the president on the other side, but we are still very confident that we are going to do a good job of this. And so I am speaking in support of the proposition that global standards are the best when you compare with the local standards. And when you talk about the global standards, these are standards that are regulated by the World Foundation for Medical Education. And the World Foundation for Medical Education, as we know, is made up of time-tested, age-long, quality-assured lists, checklists, which is not, unlike what most people think, is not rigid, but rather it is flexible. The World Foundation for Medical Education has representatives from all over the world. In fact, the current president of the World Foundation for Medical Education happens to be an African, a Nigerian, and a former provost of a medical school in Nigeria. And so whatever checklist you have is made up of standards that have been adapted, even based on the local context of the different participating medical schools that are part of the WFME. And so when you talk about the standards of the World Foundation for Medical Education, the whole essence is trying to ensure that what you have is continuous quality improvement. And so the question we'll ask ourselves is, if something has to do with continuous quality improvement, if it has to do with international best practices, why should Africa not be a part of that? If you look at medical education, medical science, and medicine by itself, medicine has no boundaries. And even diseases now have no boundaries. So if those things do not have boundaries, why should the standards for assessing medical education, why should it have boundaries? Again, another way to think about it is, now we have a lot of global migration. Most of our medical graduates that we train back home now want to cross from the south to the north. If you have standards that are not adequate, what do you expect? How do you expect them to be able to cope and be able to practice when they move to other climes? How do we encourage competitive efficiency if these people have to move from one place to the other, and we are using local standards that are based on geographical location? And this is the reason why we need to think about these things. We need to think about the fact that If you have a medical graduate from Africa, yes, he was trained in Africa. If you are saying that all you want to do is use the local standard, and then tomorrow he decides to practice in Lagos, practice in Abu Dhabi, practice in Addis Ababa, or practice in New York or Lagos, he should also still be able to practice with some level of competence, confidence, and credibility. And the only way that can be assured is if you have they've been trained using standards that aligns with international best practices. And this is all that we are clamoring for. This is all that my group is saying, that Africa should never be left behind. Africa should not only be locally acceptable, but should be globally excellent. Thank you.
So I believe we are off to a great start with that argument. I'm going to call up Prof. Lionel Green Thompson to have his own opening arguments about the African standards.
Gee, it feels like a long walk of shame here. We clearly chose the wrong side of the room. I did prepare a couple of slides, but I just wanted to pick up a couple of things that you might have noticed about the question that was asked of you in the choices. That the question was proposed as global standards or African solutions. And I'm interested in how we have come to speak like that, where standards is the preserve of somebody else, but ours are only Smolanyana solutions. So that's part of what I want to speak about today, because in making the position that African standards must be prioritized, I want to honor the role of AMCOA, that has brought together accreditors across Africa to have this exact conversation. And I believe that they're further down the road than we think, because I don't think anybody is arguing against the fact that standards need to be maintained. Is my slides going to come up? Okay, anyway, let me start, because I see the time is going already. So the way we've structured our argument today is that I will speak about why African standards. My colleague, and I really don't want to deal with the WFME in my talk at all. My colleague will speak to that as a second speaker. Then we'll do the general stuff and then close at the end. I want to just honor the fact that COMS is hosting this debate, because it's a debate by Africans in Africa about the well-being of African people. And I don't think that that's accidental, because lots of international organizations have been having the conversation about what we should do in repeated conversations as we go along. The second thing I wanted just to point out is how many people value their colleagues who are at Harvard more than they value their colleagues who work in the rural areas of our nations. We are more likely to tell the Harvard story than we are to tell the story of somebody who works in a rural area. And I want you to keep that in mind. As I prepared for this, one of the other issues in the literature at the moment is global health, where there's now a contested view of what global health should be and what it shouldn't be. And so Sheye Abimbolo has written this realist synthesis in which he creates these two positions. And there's a position called the gaze, which is the position of the person who's responding, the audience who's hearing, and the pose is the question of the posture. Now, in accreditation, as we have in global health, there are these asymmetries. But I want to just speak about that credibility deficit in the gaze. Go to the pose. The peripheries, cultural knowledge, technical knowledge, and articulation of knowledge do not matter. In the bottom, in the interpretive marginalization, where they speak about where the interpretation is happening, if you take the pose there, the periphery sense-making of partnerships, of problems, and social reality do not matter. I want to argue that if we do not develop our own standards, and I'm calling them standards intentionally for an African context, we lose all of the things that our medical education already have. We shift from the notions of collectivism, we shift from the emphasis on rural practice, we shift from this idea that people may be more important than technology. And so that is why I think it's so important that we go in that direction. It's a little bit unfortunate that we've created this model with one of the opposing speakers, but if you have a look at this, this is our proposal that this is how medical education could be framed. Rather than in a CanMeds framing, it can be framed in different kinds of relationships. And if you look at the one right on the outside, it is about social accountability. How do you allow us, why would we give up the right to write social accountability into our standards? Why would we give that up? It's a critical part of who we are. And now I am running out of time. And so what the people who are writing in this area are predominantly Ahmed Rashid, Sean Tackett, and others from India. But they speak about accreditation as existing across these three axes. And in each of them, as you think about what Africa's role is, consider what powers we would be giving up and what values of an African society we'd be giving up in this. The authority to train. We must start with that word at the beginning, standards. Nobody's talking about a change of standards, because all of our medicine is done by, as my esteemed colleague said, in best practice. I don't think it's best practice that we ignore that Africa has a story to tell in accreditation. But the question of accountability, I'm arguing that we as Africans need to build systems that have greater accountability. We've got to make sure that what we say we're doing, we are actually doing, and we must hold each other to account. I can't imagine why we would give that authority to somebody else. And so my closing comment is really about the fact that we need to define the bar, and I think MCOA is doing that to a large extent. But we've got to appreciate who we are, the assets that we have. We've got to embrace technology, and again, the comment was made this morning, ensuring that it is with a human intent. But keep in mind all of the time, to whom shall we account? African standards allow us to account primarily to the people of Africa. And that's my argument, is that we need to develop and strengthen an African standard system because we have to be increasingly accountable to those on the margins of our society. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you so much. All right. I'm going to save us some time and just straight away welcome Prof. Harisu Adamu to the stage. He's going to be rebutting some of the thoughts that we have around the African standards.
Bien, merci, good afternoon all, merci. Naturellement, ça ne va pas être facile d'intervenir après le procès Noël, mais bon, on est dans une situation de construction. Nous voulons construire quelque chose, nous voulons améliorer quelque chose, et l'Afrique fait partie du monde. L'Afrique ne peut pas continuer à réfléchir de façon isolée. L'Afrique fait partie de la planète. L'Afrique est dans les normes mondiales. Pas seulement en santé, mais dans tous les domaines. L'Afrique doit être dans le système mondial. C'est normal, c'est la mondialisation. Elle fait partie intégrante de la globalité. L'Afrique, c'est un écosystème globalisé et on ne trouve pas d'intérêt à s'isoler. Il ne faut pas faire un isolement. Ça ne serait pas une option viable, puisque nous savons que la médecine, elle transcende les frontières. Vous êtes là, nous sommes là. Ici, dans cette salle, beaucoup ont étudié en Afrique, d'autres en Europe. Et finalement, on a presque le même jargon, le même langage. On se comprend. Et donc, c'est pour ces raisons qu'effectivement, pour des raisons de reconnaissance, de mobilité internationale, nous devrons aller dans le sens de réfléchir à aligner l'Afrique dans les normes et dans un monde interconnecté. L'accréditation de la World Federation of Medical Education, elle n'impose pas un schéma à l'Afrique, elle montre le chemin de la qualité. Elle montre le chemin de la crédibilité. L'Afrique, en acceptant ces modèles, c'est qu'on sera plus crédible, on aura plus accès à la mobilité. Et bien sûr, aujourd'hui, on fait la formation médicale en Afrique. On est tenté de partir faire un renforcement des capacités aux États-Unis, en Europe. Donc, on a besoin de ces modèles. C'est important et ça permet d'éliminer aussi tout soupçon. Ça crée aussi de la transparence et ça crée un schéma. Ça oblige nos écoles de formation à aller dans la formation continue et dans l'amélioration de la qualité. Elle permet vraiment d'éliminer les préjugés. Aujourd'hui, un médecin formé en Afrique, s'il part aux États-Unis rapidement, on va dire il faut qu'on sache si vraiment il est capable de jouer le rôle de médecin ou il faut encore qu'il suive un nouveau entraînement. J'aimerais bien vous montrer ces tableaux parce que c'est les tableaux qui résument un peu les différents standards, les normes de la World Federation of Medical Education. Et on voit bien qu'est-ce qui est au centre. Il faut mettre en avant les missions et les objectifs de la formation. Il faut mettre le programme éducatif et comment on fait les évaluations. Et naturellement, il faut disposer les ressources. Et c'est là où je vais insister. Aller dans l'utilisation des normes mondiales nous permet vraiment de constituer un argument solide pour faire le plaidoyer face à nos gouvernements. Et la dernière étape, c'est l'amélioration continue de la qualité. Elle pousse à aller de l'avant, à améliorer ce qu'on a déjà proposé. Donc, c'est vraiment des critères qui sont impartiaux et qui permettent aux patients africains comme aux médecins d'avoir des soins équitables. Il n'y a pas de raison à ce que les patients de l'Afrique n'aient pas droit à des soins et les patients d'ailleurs aient droit à un autre soin. Il faut que ça soit équitable. Et pour ça, on a besoin d'utiliser ces normes qui sont internationales. Donc, c'est vraiment un cadre vertueux. Et on est en train de dire que je suis dans les temps. Mais je voulais bien que les gens comprennent que cette accréditation internationale, elle est un moyen pour nous d'installer la qualité en Afrique. Mais également aussi, adopter ces normes, ce n'est pas vraiment une soumission, mais c'est aller à un standard qui permet nous-mêmes, à nos médecins, de revendiquer les standards mondiaux et de permettre aux patients africains d'avoir les mêmes soins, de permettre aux médecins africains d'avoir la même chose que tous. Donc, adoptons ces normes et comme principal moyen d'assurance.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Merci beaucoup. I'll call on Prof. Fiona, Dr. Fiona, who is going to also rebut some of the thoughts that we have from the proposition.
Ladies and gentlemen, I stand here before you to move with the opposition of the proposed motion. Adoption of international accreditation standards, particularly those of the World Federation for Medical Education, as the primary pathway for quality assurance, poses challenges for African medical schools. We need African solutions for the diverse African problems. To begin with, let me bring to our attention what it costs for international accreditation. We are looking at a minimum of $60,000 US for accreditation. This is a minimum. There are additional charges that are imposed on us for international accreditation to take place. We all know as we sit here how much or what this money could be better used for in our real life situations in Africa. An accreditation model that only best resourced schools can afford. This is what it means. Only best resourced schools can afford such accreditation expenses. This then will promote inequality, inequity among us as African medical schools. As we are gathered here at this gathering, we are promoting unity, we are promoting moving together in COMSA. How are we going to do that when some of us will be left behind because they cannot afford such expenses? The funds that are consumed by international accreditation would pose, could be instead channeled to strengthening medical education directly, to improving teaching and clinical training, faculty development, and student support. Diverting such resources into external compliance compounds existing inequity rather than addressing it. We are not saying that Africa doesn't need standards. Surely we do. Our patients deserve that. An African standard must prioritize cost-effective innovation. For example, a competency-based assessment with low fidelity mannequins or community-based clinical rotations over expensive infrastructure, which would be expected of us in the international accreditation requirement. The rapid evolution of medical technology, AI diagnostics, robotic surgery, genomic sequencing, telemedicine, all these present a moving target that is incredibly hard for resource-limited systems to hit. African standards should measure a school's ability to adapt to technology change, not its ability to purchase it. International accreditation standards would require African medical schools to be up to date with these technologies. Ladies and gentlemen, African medical schools cannot afford this, but we can afford to adapt and not be left behind, far behind. Rich and diverse African culture is sidelined, we believe, in the one-size-fits-all international standards that are a perpetuation, actually, of colonization. African standards will account for its richness, the richness of our languages when our students are interacting with our patients in their vernacular languages. African standards will account for the role of traditional medical practices that we know are real and prevalent in our communities. So to conclude this position, ultimately, an African standard of accreditation is an act of sovereignty. It ensures that doctors produced on the continent are fit for purpose, for unique epidemiological, economic, and cultural realities of African societies, rather than being judged by metrics that are designed for entirely different healthcare ecosystems. I submit.
Thank you, Dr. Fiona. So we're going to turn up the heat just a little bit right now, and I'll invite all the speakers to please just remain seated for this section. But I'm going to ask the proposition to give us 2 questions for the opposition. The proposition give us 2 questions for the opposition. And Prof. Andwalem, you will lead this section in terms of responses, but you can get responses from the rest of the team. And then after that, you'll have 2 questions for the proposition, and Dr. Faith, you will lead this section, and you can contribute. And then I'd like everybody in the room, please, we need about 8 people, bold, ready with a 1-minute speech or a pointed question to walk up to the mics once we give the cue. We'd like you to be involved in this debate and just say your heart, share your thoughts, and there can be responses also from those that are sitting right. So we will start with questions to you from the opposition. So over to you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would ask the opposition that was part of the WFME accreditation standard really suggests social accountability, and which part of it really tries to address African issues and African problems. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Professor, for your question. When we take a look at the WIFME or the World Federation of Medical Education standards in line to social accountability, I want to remind you that these statements made in these standards are pretty much guidelines. They are not prescriptory. Social accountability, according to the WIFME standards, is allowed to be defined according to each setting in the best way it drives meaning. Moving into that as well, I actually think Africa is already adopting global standards. When we met with the WHO team, I think they are somewhere there in the crowd, and as mentioned by their lead today in the morning, they are on the agenda of developing the Africa Health Professions Education Quality Standards. What happened there was a process of benchmarking globally and adapting locally. A consensus approach was developed in Poche's room to see how global standards can inform country standards and eventually work together to develop the global standards. Social accountability, the regional standards. Social accountability was well defined according to what the regional context is.
Thank you so much. Any follow-up on that? Okay, let's have a question from the proposition to the opposition.
Sure, I can have a question for you. On your end, thinking that we should only go African and thinking that's the way to go, has any of us taken time to assess if any of our standards are not meeting the global standards?
Thank you. This is a good question. But I would like to start by saying that African standards doesn't mean completely opposing global standards. When you say African standards, it has two edges. One, it aligns and also endorses similarities with global standards. But the most important thing is it should accommodate differences, because every part of the world, as it is similar, it is also different. Africa is not completely the same like the other part of the world. We have several differences. We have differences in terms of resources, be it material, facility, infrastructure, or even human resources. We have a huge gap in terms of technology. You know, we cannot be measured by inputs like class sizes, ratios, and others. But we should be measured by outputs. When say outputs, we should be measured by whether our doctors, our health professionals are able to treat malaria, tuberculosis, and other ailments as well. So that is what it means by African standards.
Thank you so much, Prof. I think there's somebody else on your team that wanted to
Please.
add some thoughts.
So I just want to respond to the two statements you made directly. The one was that the HPE movement by the WHO is based on international processes. I think what's been the reason that I've supported the WHO movements is that we're having an African conversation. The fact that it's informed by other standards elsewhere doesn't mean that the African voice is not primary. And that's the question, it's about the primariness. So if I speak about the HPCSA in South Africa, the Health Professions Council of South Africa, has probably a more than 50 years history of accreditation of South Africa. And we know that they're good, right? Because you can go to the rural areas of Canada and people can have a ward round in Afrikaans because so many of our doctors are there. So they've taken the doctors from that accreditation system anyway. I don't think we need to pay some more to do that.
If I may just buttress on what Prof has just said, let's remember that the Western world, I would like to use a phrase, our doctors who have graduated in Africa, trained in African medical schools, in our standards, are selling like hotcakes. They are being taken anyway, with or without WFME expensive accreditation. We're still producing good standard doctors.
Thank you, Dr. Fiona. I want to hear some more thought from this side of the room. Francois, we're calling on you to contribute to this in one way or the other. Or if you don't want to contribute to this particular one, you could ask another question. We want to hear from you.
So I wonder about the fact that the African standards are being touted, but which African standards are these? Because there is perhaps a process by the accreditors to develop something, but if we open a new medical school next week in Niger or in South Africa, which standards are those that we are going to be using for this process of accreditation?
Question to you.
So I think what is clear is that most schools in Africa have started because they've gone to speak to another school. If you look at the Namibian experience, the Health Professions Council was very involved in the establishment of the school in Namibia. And that seems to be the practice. Sometimes there's an international partner, you're right. Sometimes they do partner with an American school or an English school to get the school started. But I think there are examples in the past where the African standard, while not being declared as an African standard, is a standard that's originated on the continent.
Hey, thank you very much for that lively discussion. I hope you're thinking and coming to your conclusions. I'd like to invite people seated in the audience. You have a thought, you have something you'd like to say. We're going to keep it to 1 minute for each thought. Once you hear applause, you know that the time is up. Okay, great. So please feel free to stand and just line up behind one of the mics. We have eight people that will be permitted to speak for 1 minute each. Please feel free. Okay, so let's start from this end of the room, please. Brief introduction, your name, and then speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I'm Dr. Jacqueline Kitulu, President of the World Medical Association. So I oppose the motion, and I align with the team opposing it, not because I oppose accreditation or high standards. I strongly support both. As president of the WMA, I believe every medical graduate, regardless of where they are trained, should meet high standards that protect patients and uphold the integrity of our profession. However, I do not support making one international accreditation framework the primary pathway for Africa. Africa must lead in defining quality medical education. We should develop accreditation systems that respond to our health priorities while remaining globally benchmarked. As I've often said, African solutions and standards mean our needs are met without lowering standards accepted anywhere else in the world.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's go to this side of the room, please. Can you help us with the microphone on that side?
Okay. Thank you. My name is Patrick Kijoko from the University of the Gambia. I want to oppose the motion as well. I do not believe that African medical schools, which are largely funded by the African people, the governments of Africa, should focus on producing people who are going to be exported to the north or the northern countries of the world. So I think considering having one international standard so as they are more marketable in those regions should not even factor in our discussion at all. We should produce people for Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I will back the trend. I support the motion. And in asking the question that within Africa and in low and middle income countries, arguments in health are often made that we are so poor that we can only be deserving of low quality alternatives, or what we call solutions. This argument that we should go for African solutions sounds very familiar, and along those lines, that Africans are so poor that they're not deserving of an international standard of medical education.
Thank you, sir. All right. Please.
Okay, thank you. I am Dr. Kalkidan, and I will favor, am I audible, right? So I will favor the proposition as we need to follow the global standard. So our challenge is not choosing between global standard and African priority. Rather, we need to have the position and the say in which we should have a place in Africa in the global standard to contextualize the global standard to African context. It's not about choosing from the global standard or African priorities or African solution. Rather, we need to have a say. We need to contextualize the global standard to African context. Everyone shouldn't have the health shouldn't take part in passport of everyone or anything.
Much.
So thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Yeah,
Please.
thank you very much. Mohamed Manga is my name, Gombe State University, Nigeria. I just want to ask some questions. Is Africa part of the world, or is it that the world is part of Africa? And when we start talking like this, it's a kind of inferiority complex we are already giving ourselves. When you finish Africanizing the curricula or the accreditation processes, when you award your degrees, you want to give MD African version or MBBS African version. We should lead the world with African flavor. Even in the same country, you have certain peculiarities that are accepted to be differences between universities, not just alone this. So we have to belong to the global community. The whole concept of standardization is to standardize, not to differentiate or discriminate. Thank you.
So much, sir. We're going to have to stop. We're over time, but let's just take. Okay, if you can do this in 30 seconds or less.
Okay, I will just be fast.
Yes.
All I need to do is to oppose the motion as well. And I'm doing this by raising some questions. What stories are we telling? Is it African stories or the entire world story? So my take home here is, let's train Africans the African way and let them go to be retrained if they have to go abroad.
Thank you, sir.
And again, finally, global standards should be drafted with African peculiarities.
Oh my. Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a faculty member in the university. You know, Africa should have their own standard and accreditation, and the doctors, they will be free to go to one country, to the country inside the continent to practice freely. But in the world of artificial intelligence and global health, we can't separate. If you want, you can't. You can't separate yourself from global health. So we need to train our doctors ready for cross-border.
Thank you, sir.
But don't forget, Africans is for Africans.
Thank you so much, sir. Now, I believe the eighth doctor is the person who's standing by the mic right now. And so the rest of us, please, can you condense any of your thoughts to just single punchline, sweet sentences, right? So that we all have the opportunity to speak. But we'll give you the opportunity to speak because you were number
Thank
8.
you, Biniam from UJT. I think the issue of not conforming to international standards and trying to Africanize everything could also be like the issue of a human right. We are denying our graduates not travel and like be that hotcakes or whatsoever was said on the stage, and we're just denying from that one. There is a famous saying that goes like, a burnt child dressed the fire. Just because we had the harsh reality of colonialism, I don't think we should be seeing everything from that picture. We are in the globe and we are
you,
part
sir.
of the world. We should conform to the international.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Now, I'm going to permit the rest of us to just say 1-2 sentences, and then we'll move on. Pardon me. So condense your argument. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm Christopher Kulunaka, a student delegate from University of Global Health Equity. Just to be brief, I have always thought that Africa is already working in their own system, but only trying to play integration where it is needed. So my question should be that we should not ask that whether we are adopting the international standards or we are dealing with our standard, but instead, to what extent are we working together to address the global challenges? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, sir.
I'm Henry Stokes Mulenga from Copperbelt University. As long as medical education still thinks in quantitative terms, then this argument will go on forever and ever. I want to advise whoever is thinking about standardizing care that it's a qualitative description of local competence. And the more tools you use to describe your candidate, the more you will know about them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Final person on this side.
Thank you very much. Philip Dambisia from the University of Cape Town. So firstly, I should say that I am quite dismayed at the idea that we are talking about international versus African, yet Africa is a continent of 54 countries. Why don't we recognize ourselves as international?
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And my final sentence is that if we're to truly create socially accountable medical and health science education programs, then we must integrate the views of our communities, and therefore international standards, as they are spoken to, should not be what is adopted.
Thank you very much. All right.
Thank you. I'm Simon Pierre Choukem from Cameroon University of Chang. I've heard people from the proposition talking with the postulate that having our own standards means low standard, which is a problem. I think we have adopted things so that we have created a kind of brain laziness. We should stop that. Let's sit and write our own standards. Let's start with the laziness.
Thank you, sir.
I am Professor Mazi Ekejikem from Imo State University. I'm in support of the fact that we should have an African standard for training our medical students rather than copying the international standard. The reason is this: Africa should start. If you start somewhere, you'll be surprised that over time, other countries of the world will copy from Africa. So we should be able to build our own standard for others to copy.
Thank you so much. Okay, final permission.
I'm Hassan Ladib. I'm from Mohammed VI University of Health Sciences. I think we are capable, we can work, we can propose, and we can integrate global standards and propose something credible. That's the issue. But before, people who will work about that, they have to train on pedagogy, on competency-based medicine, on local epidemiology. And that's the issue. We can build.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Now, I have, and Dr. Bisola, I'm looking back at you. She's been doing a lot of the organization. She's right at the back. We have to wrap this up. But I've been asked by the teams that they'd like to respond in just about a minute to some of the thoughts that came from the floor, and then we have the closing arguments. Please.
Can I go first?
Sure.
How many of us love the World Cup? Just a few of us. And when we are at the World Cup, how do we all feel? We are part of the world, right? Now that's the same spirit. Health is a very fundamental aspect for all of us.
All right, thank you.
And we did a study, FEMA, a division of InThealth, in partnership with WHO Afro Unit and AMCOR, to understand if African standards are aligned with the WIFME standards. our results, yet to be published by the WHO team, revealed that majority of the African standards were aligned with the global standards.
Dr. Faith, we need to cut this, please.
Yeah, I just want to ask the question itself. Why do people say when it said African standards, it means low quality? It is not. It could be a high quality African standard that understands the context we are working in. I want to add one more thing. People say the WFME is time tested. Where is it tested? If it is not tested in Africa, it is not tested for us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's take our closing arguments. Now the temperature in the room is like 100 degrees C. So let's take our closing arguments. I'll invite Dr. Francois to give a closing argument, 3 minutes for the proposition, and then after that we'll have a closing argument from Prof. Ali's 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. So we've heard arguments this afternoon that accreditation is about power and who it gets wielded against. I would argue that we need to reframe that argument and talk about agency, taking our agency and using that agency to define what we do and how we do it. And that doesn't mean starting from nothing. There are foundations that we can already use. The opposition showed you a competency framework that is from South Africa for South Africa, and I'd like to thank them for that because my name is on it. And it exactly supports our arguments. We believe that the foundation of the standards process are the guidelines, guidance that is offered by the World Federation. And that competency framework defines exactly the African house that we will build on those standards. The idea is not that we are going to be precluding any African ideas. The World Federation for Medical Education is quite explicit about this. It's guidance. It asks us, do you have a curriculum? Do you have an explicit mission? That mission can be social accountability. There's nothing in the standards that precludes that. It's not prescribing to us we must teach in any particular way. It does ask us to justify our educational methods. Have we lifted and shifted those from the north, or are they thoughtfully developed to address our local problems? And fundamentally, we believe that we are not islands. The well-being of each of us depends on the well-being of all of us. And so if we are arguing for different standards in different places, does that mean that we accept that a patient on one side of an artificially drawn border can have different quality healthcare to somebody on the other side of that border? A shared foundation is not an argument against locally appropriate care. So we would argue that our humanity does not stop at a border, it transcends it, and that a vote for this motion is not a vote for the North. It is a vote for the African dean who walks into a health ministry, holds up a credible standard, and says, this is what our patients are owed. Now fund it. Keep that foundation. Build the African house. We beg to propose.
Thank you so much. Professor Alice, you have the opportunity of wrapping up our thoughts.
Good afternoon, everyone. I won't talk a lot. I want to start by asking 2 questions. And the first one is, we've been training in our individual countries. We have the standards that we use to train our doctors. Are we saying that what the doctors we train are not quality doctors? That is one question. If the answer is yes, then we are doing okay. And is there actually research that has been done to show that the local standards that we use are not quality standards? If there is any, I would want a hand up so that we can make reference. Now, this silence shows that the standards that we use in our countries are good. All we are saying today is that as a continent of 54 countries, let's put these together, let's refine them, let's combine them, refine them, and make them continental standards so that they can address the accreditation well for medical schools. It will assist us to produce doctors who are fit for purpose. And I don't need to continue convincing ourselves because we've been using this. What we need to do, let's come together. We should have done it yesterday to combine forces so that we come with a continental accreditation standards that will be used to train doctors who will work anywhere in Africa. If they go out, it is okay. Then they can, be validated there. But let not a doctor trained in Kenya be validated because they want to work in Nigeria, they want to work in South Africa. No. The doctor, once trained in the African continent, should be a doctor recognized as qualified, competent, and colleagues. If we do this now, join me. I don't want to belabor the point. I just want to request you, join me and my team so that we can have our standards for the African continent to produce doctors who can address our own problems, because the wearer of the shoe is the one who knows where it pinches most. So the wearer of the shoe will have to put on the correct size, and that is us. The shoe is pinching. Let's not continue looking for solutions from outside. Let them be homegrown.
Thank you so much. How many of you have had an exciting time just listening to the arguments back and forth? Can we give our speakers a huge round of applause? It's been a beautiful debate. And before we take the final vote, I'd like to thank each of the teams for a rich and rigorous debate. And let's just reflect on what we've heard, right? The proposition has asked us to consider the value of international accreditation standards as a pathway towards quality, accountability, comparability, global recognition. And they've argued that African medical schools should not be excluded from international benchmarks, quality assurance that can be strengthened through these established global frameworks. The opposition has asked us to consider the risks of making international standards the primary pathway, power, social accountability. They reminded us that accreditation must be rooted in African realities, responsive to local systems, accountable to communities that we are meant to serve, etc. But what is clear from this debate is that it's not about whether quality matters. Both sides and everyone in this room agrees that quality matters. And the real debate is how is quality defined? Who defines it? Who benefits from it? How is it measured? Now, we're going to go back to vote again. And we'll see what our thought was before this debate and what our thought was after this debate. So let's go back to vote again. I'd like you to pull up your phone and debate. Everybody on stage, please don't turn back and and rig the votes. So let's have you vote. The same thing. African medical schools should adopt international accreditation standards, particularly those of the World Federation for Medical Education, as the primary pathway for quality assurance. Indicate now if you are for the motion or against the motion. Let's give you just a little bit. Okay. Anybody still voting? Okay, a few more people. The opposition is still planning a coup. Just in case. All right, anybody else still voting? Uh-oh, this is very serious now. Wi-Fi is a challenge. I think via random probability we should have enough votes. Or would this be, is there some skew to people who have not voted? All right, let's, so that we wrap up the session, let's give 1 more minute for the voting. And Dr. Bisola, you can help us prepare to wrap up. We're good? Great. Okay, so can we do a reveal of what we were thinking before we started this session? Can we see the initial votes? Oh, split right down the middle. This was before, right? This was the first vote. Second vote. First vote. Okay, so this is the first vote. And this is like a clean split down the middle, isn't it? So we had people, the reds were the no's, let's adopt African solutions, and then the greens were the yes, we need global standards, particularly the WF. Well, they're telling me that it's like, ooh. so let's go back. Okay. Can we go back to the current votes? What is this is the current vote. Oh, this is current. And currently we've got 50 points. It's still ongoing, that's why it's changing. This only takes 1 vote from 1 IP address, so you can't do it twice. Oh my goodness. Okay, I think we should close. Can we close the vote right now? Yes? So let's close. Before you bring out another phone, you know, your second phone, and vote the second time. So, oh my. All right. So adopt African standards. It's still going on. It's 50.58%. Adopt global standards was 49 point, and it's still switching. It's still live. Can we close the vote? This is tough. This is a tough crowd. A tough crowd. Okay, Dr. B, I'm going to pause you right now. Let's stop. Let's hold on to the vote. Just refresh one last time, and then let's see where we are at now. You just refresh one last time, and let's see where we're at now. Once you've refreshed, let me know. Then we stop that one. We're refreshed. Great. So, ladies and gentlemen, adopt African standards 50.43%. Adopt global standards 49.57%. Can we give a round of applause? Now, just hold on. So, this is before. Adopt African Solutions was just about 41%. And then after, it swings up to about 50%. Versus Adopt Global Standards was 58.5%. And then it swung down to about 49.57%. Ladies and gentlemen, who should we declare as the winner of this Oxford debate? Okay, but before they go, let me close by saying this. The future of African medical school accreditation in Africa it should not be shaped by what we would call false binaries, right? The challenge before us is not just to simply choose between the global and the African. It's to build systems of quality assurance that are globally conversant, locally accountable, educationally rigorous, and socially responsive. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I'd like to appreciate all those that put thought into this session too. They've been meeting for a while and thinking through this, but particularly Dr. Bisola, thank you. They'd like to take a picture with you. I'd like to take a picture on the screen.
All right, let's have you, Dr. Barnabas, in the middle, and let's have the two opposing teams stand for a picture. That was one of the most difficult votes we've ever made. And thank you, Dr. Barnabas, for being a most potent catalyst to the fierce debate. Dr. Barnabas, you have to be right in the middle. And ladies and gentlemen, let's give this wonderful speakers another resounding warm round of applause. That was truly, truly exceptional. And I'm sure when we go home, we'll remember MedEdAfrica as another very interesting debate ground for the ideas that were shared. Ladies and gentlemen, as we prepare to go out for the coffee break, we're going to have a very quick coffee, only 10 minutes, and the breakout sessions will be on the other building, just like we did this morning. So please remember to leave your interpretation devices here, and kindly note that at 6:30 p.m., we have a gala reception at Arada Park. Now it's going to be particularly a bit cold, so make sure that you dress in comfortable clothing and warm clothing. So now let's have the 10-minute coffee and go to the breakout session. At 6:30 p.m., we go to Arada Park. And remember that you can find the full agenda on MedEd2026.org. Thank you and have a lovely remainder of your afternoon. So the buses will be at the roundabout of the hotel. Yes, at the white building.